Now for the rear sway bar on S550 and S650, we have 3 different options: competition, street, and our drag race bar. This car has the competition rear bar, but the installation is the same across the board. The reason why we went with competition is because this car has the dual rate springs and we'll see track use. I'll show you a product review and a step-by-step install on how to install it on your S650 or S550 Mustang. Rear sway bars for your S550 and S650 Mustang. When it comes to the handling characteristics of your late model Mustang, sway bars are a great place to start. In front of me, we have a competition rear sway bar, but before we jump to the competition, let's start with our street rear bar. It's an adjustable rear bar that has 3 different positions from softest to stiffest, and it complements both stock springs and the majority of our street spring offerings, most importantly, our progressive spring. This goes for MagneRide cars too. We recently had a 2024 GT here with MagneRide that we installed our MagneRide Sport Springs on. The Sport Springs have a softer spring rate for those MagneRide cars, so naturally we wanted a stiffer bar to complement the MagneRide Sport Springs. That's where our rear street bar came in, along with our 1 3/8" front bar. Before we dive into sway bars in general, let's talk about understeer versus oversteer. Understeer is a situation when you turn the wheel, but the car keeps moving forward. And for oversteer, it's actually the opposite. You start to make the corner, the front tires stick, but the rear tires have trouble following the front, and the back end begins to step out. If you want to learn more about understeer versus oversteer, as well as the overview of sway bars in general and why they're a great first suspension mod for your Mustang, be sure to check out our channel for that video. Now that you understand the difference between understeer and oversteer, addressing the inherent understeer that these cars have from the factory, obviously things like Explorers and SUVs have a bit more understeer given their higher center of gravity and overall weight, but these Mustangs also have some understeer from the factory too. If you're looking to pick up one sway bar to start, the rear bar is the way to go. Whether you have progressive springs or factory springs, adding a rear sway bar is going to tune out some of that inherent understeer that the chassis has from the factory. And that's going to allow the car to feel more neutral when it comes to handling. The best part is with these adjustable bars is that you have 3 different positions. If you feel a little bit too much oversteer, you overshot and you made the car feel less neutral going towards the rear, and you have too much oversteer where the car is kicking out from side to side as you're trying to make corners, loosen up the rear bar, back it down a hole. Or the opposite, you want to tune out more of the understeer, and so the back end follows the front end, you can add a little bit more bar in the rear to compensate. And in terms of our street adjustable rear bar, it's a great upgrade not only for factory springs, but also our most popular spring, which is the Sport Progressive. Now, if you do frequent the drag strip and you want something a little bit more hardcore, picking up our drag rear sway bar is the perfect solution for you, given that it is much, much stiffer than the factory bar or any of our other bar offerings for that matter. It's a little bit heavy, mind you, but it's gonna add that rear end stability to keep both tires planted on these IRS cars as you launch. If you want more details on our drag rear sway bar, be sure to catch Scott in that video on our YouTube channel. And last but certainly not least, what I have in front of me. Today we're going to be installing a competition rear sway bar, which is specifically engineered for our dual rate springs and stiffer, more competition inspired road racing springs. Whether you're running a coilover setup with linear springs front and rear, or in the rear with those higher spring rates, we'll call it 1,000 pounds or higher, or you're running our dual rate springs that secondary rate is getting up into the 11 and 1200 range, adding a competition rear sway bar is the best way to go. Believe it or not, the competition bar is actually softer than our street and definitely drag race bar. The reason for that is because the springs and the bars have a relationship that factor into the roll stiffness of the vehicle. You have spring rate and bar rate, and making sure everything's driving together is what's going to help you handle and get around that corner that much easier. Just like our street adjustable rear bar, our competition bar also has 3 adjustment points from stiffest all the way to softest. If you are running the dual rate springs, depending on your driving style, we do recommend starting with the softest hole and going from there. Everything you need is is included for an easy installation. One thing that's different about the competition rear sway bar kit in comparison to our other rear sway bar kits is that we include the offset brackets that actually relocate the bar further rearward towards the rear of the vehicle. This straightens out the end links because in an ideal situation, when everything's moving back and forth with that IRS, you want those end links to be perpendicular to the sway bar itself for optimal suspension geometry. Regardless of which rear sway bar you choose for your S550 or S650 Mustang, installation is pretty much identical across the board. You may have to remove that diffuser depending on which model S550 you have, but all of the S650s have that diffuser installed. All of our rear sway bars are made right here in the USA at our Valdosta, Georgia manufacturing facility, and they come with a limited lifetime warranty. So if you have any issues whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out because we'll be happy to take care of you. And today, we're going to be installing this bar on our S650 HPDE car. Here are the tools required for installation. Starting on either side, remove the brake line brackets on the sway bar. Then, using a wrench and an Allen key, loosen the end links. Once the nut is off, you can pull the end link out of the sway bar end. The rear under panel needs to be removed, starting with these two bolts by the diff. If you have a 24, all of them have this under panel. If you have an S550, Mach 1s, GT350s, and GT500s all have this under panel. Then the 5 bolts holding it to the bumper. And the 2 plastic clips as well as the final bolt. Remove the bolts holding the sway bar brackets in place. Do this on both sides. Pull the metal brackets off of the bushings and then you'll be able to maneuver it out. We're installing the competition rear sway bar, which has a relocation bracket that needs to go in first. Install the supplied hardware into the factory holes, tightening everything down evenly. Torque to 35 foot-pounds. Use the supplied grease to grease the inside of the sway bar bushings. Then bring the Steeda sway bar up into place in the same orientation as the factory bar. With the flat side of the bushing facing flush against the surface, install the new bracket. Now you can install the nuts onto the bracket. You can tighten these down fully to 35 foot-pounds as well. Get the end link back in place. We chose the softest hole to pair with the dual rates on this car. As the spring rate increases, you actually want a softer rear bar. And the included bracket can be installed to relocate the brake line. Go ahead and get everything tightened down. Use a wrench and the Allen key to fully tighten the end link studs, then torque them to 65 foot-pounds. Repeat the process on the other side and your installation's complete. In terms of front versus rear sway bar installations on these S550 and S650 Mustangs, the rear sway bar is much easier to install. If you're looking to dabble a little bit in changing the vehicle dynamics in terms of understeer versus oversteer towards your driving style, whether you're out on track or you're having fun on back roads, a great way to make the car feel a little bit more neutral or even a little tail happy is adding an adjustable rear bar and stiffening things up. We're really excited to get this car out on track with the competition sway bar and the dual rate springs. The bar rate and the spring rates just work really well in a competition setting, so stay tuned to the channel for that. Comment below and let us know what other S650 videos you want to see. Hit us up at Steeda.com for all of your Mustang performance part and Ford performance part needs. Hit that like, subscribe, the notification bell, and don't forget the most important thing, speed matters.